It gave me 60 minutes to abandon my family's legacy, 1 hour before the cops haul me to jail. The HOA president's smirk said she'd won, her body cam rolling as she condemned my grandfather's ranch. But she didn't know about the sheriff's badge burning in my pocket, or the secrets buried in this land. This isn't just an eviction. It's a reckoning 25 years in the making. And it starts now. The morning started like any other day on my grandfather's ranch in Harrington, Texas. I was Nathan Caldwell, 32 years old, and I just inherited this beautiful piece of land after my grandfather passed away 3 months ago. The sun was barely up when I heard the crunch of gravel under tires, followed by the aggressive slam of car doors. Through my kitchen window, I spotted Pamela Henderson, the self-appointed queen of the Harrington Homeowners Association, marching toward my gate with two uniformed officers trailing behind her. Her face was twisted in that familiar scowl I'd seen in the warning letter she'd sent me last week, a letter I'd admittedly ignored because my grandfather had always told me this ranch was exempt from HOA rules. Pamela's voice cut through the morning air like a rusty saw. Nathan Caldwell, you have exactly 1 hour to vacate these premises due to multiple safety violations. She waved a clipboard dramatically at my chicken coop and vegetable garden. Your illegal agricultural activities are destroying property values, and your grandfather destroyed my family's business 25 years ago. The accusation hit me like a sucker punch. My grandfather destroying someone's business? That didn't sound like the man who raised me, the man who taught me that integrity was worth more than any amount of money. I stepped out onto the porch, keeping my hands visible. You learned that when dealing with cops, morning officers, Sheriff Ramsey. I nodded at Derek, who I'd known since high school. His eyes darted between me and Pamela, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. Nathan, I'm sorry about this, but Mrs. Henderson filed an official complaint. Says you're violating HOA regulations with your farming operations. Derek's voice carried an apologetic tone, but Pamela cut him off. Don't apologize to him. His grandfather cost my husband everything, refused to sell when we needed that land deal to save our construction business. Now this one thinks he can just waltz in here and do whatever he wants. Her voice cracked slightly on the word husband, and for a brief moment, I saw something beyond anger in her eyes. Pain, maybe even grief. I glanced back at the kitchen where a family photo sat on the counter. Me, my late wife Sarah, and our daughter Lily, taken just before Sarah passed away 2 years ago. Next to it was the old iron safe my grandfather had specifically mentioned in his will. Look, Mrs. Henderson, I think there's been a misunderstanding. My grandfather always said this ranch had special exemptions. I began. But Pamela wasn't having it. She thrust a piece of paper at me, her hot pink manicured nails practically stabbing through the page. 1 hour, Mr. Caldwell. Pack what you can carry and leave, or these officers will arrest you for trespassing on HOA property. Behind her, I noticed Tyson, her 20-something son, holding up his phone and grinning like he won the lottery. The kid was live streaming this whole confrontation, probably posting it on social media with some clickbait title about drama in small-town Texas. Mon's laying down the law, he shouted, pumping his fist in the air. This is going viral for sure. My hands started shaking as I read the eviction notice. The legal jargon swam before my eyes, but the message was clear. Leave or lose everything. Through the window, I could see my daughter Lily's bedroom, still half unpacked with boxes of her toys and books. We'd moved here, hoping for a fresh start after losing Sarah. And now, this woman wanted to rip it all away. Derek, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. You know my grandfather. You know he wouldn't have done anything illegal. Can't we sort this out without? Pamela's laugh was sharp and bitter. Oh, your grandfather was legal, all right. Legal enough to watch my husband's company crumble while he sat on land that could have saved us. Legal enough to buy up our assets for pennies on the dollar when we went bankrupt. She stepped closer, and I could smell her overpowering perfume mixed with the scent of her morning coffee. But times change, Mr. Caldwell. I'm the HOA president now, and I've spent 15 years making sure people like your family can't hurt anyone else in this town. Sheriff Ramsey shifted uncomfortably, his hand resting on his belt, not near his weapon, just a nervous habit. Nathan, maybe it's best if you come down to the station. We can look into this deed exemption you mentioned. But before I could respond, Pamela had already turned on her designer heels and was strutting back to her car. She paused at my gate, pulling out a bright yellow note and pinning it to the wood with deliberate slowness. An hour, she called over her shoulder. After that, everything on this property becomes subject to HOA seizure for safety violations. Tyson gave me a mocking salute before following his mother, still filming everything. As their cars disappeared down the dusty road, I stood there feeling like the ground had shifted under my feet. My mind raced to the safe in the kitchen. My grandfather had said it contained important documents about the ranch, including something about water rights and deed exemptions that predated any HOA formation. But I'd been hesitant to open it, partly out of grief and partly out of fear of what I might find. "Dad?" Lily's small voice came from behind me. She stood in her pajamas, clutching her favorite stuffed horse. Why was that lady yelling? I knelt down and pulled her into a hug, feeling her small body trembling against mine. "Just a misunderstanding, sweetheart. But you know what? We're not going anywhere. This is our home now, and nobody's going to take it away from us." But even as I said the words, I wondered if I could keep that promise. I had less than an hour to figure out what my grandfather had been hiding in that safe, and why Pamela Henderson seemed to think she had the power to destroy everything he'd built. As I headed back inside, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. When I opened it, my blood ran cold. It was a photo of Pamela shaking hands with a man in an expensive suit outside a real estate development office. The caption read, "She's not after justice. She's after your land. Check the safe before it's too late." But when Nathan's phone buzzes, a photo of Pamela with a shady developer freezes him in his tracks. The video hits social media like a bomb. Pamela Henderson, wearing her gaudy HOA president badge that looked more like a beauty pageant sash, was broadcasting live to what seemed like half of Texas. "Friends and neighbors of Harrington," she began, her voice dripping with false concern. "I need to share something deeply troubling with you all. Nathan Caldwell, who just inherited the old Caldwell Ranch, refused to comply with a lawful 1-hour eviction notice this morning. This man is running illegal agricultural operations that are damaging our environment and lowering our property values." She flashed documents at the camera, probably the same bogus safety violations she'd waved at me earlier. The comment section was already exploding with reactions, and I watched in horror as my reputation got shredded in real time. "He thinks he's above the law, just like his grandfather was," Pamela continued. And I noticed she'd positioned herself perfectly with the morning light hitting her face just right. This wasn't spontaneous. This was calculated character assassination. Within an hour, the local news had picked up the story. Newcomer Nathan Caldwell faces HOA backlash, scrolled across the bottom of the screen as a reporter stood outside my ranch, filming my chicken coop like it was some kind of crime scene. But the real knife in the back came when Tyson's video surfaced. That kid had somehow edited footage to make it look like my chickens were running wild through a neighbor's garden, destroying their prized roses and vegetable patches. The production value was surprisingly good. Flashy transitions, dramatic music, hashtags galore. "Caldwell's chickens gone wild," the caption screamed. The problem: those weren't even my chickens in the video. I recognized that garden as belonging to the Millers 3 properties over, and I was pretty sure those were Tyson's own chickens causing the damage. But try explaining that to the angry mob forming in the comments sections. "Always knew something was off about that family," one comment read. "Apple doesn't fall far from the tree," said another. Pamela wasn't done with just social media. I later learned she'd spent that afternoon visiting her late husband's old office building, now a vacant lot with a faded "for sale" sign. Eleanor Murphy, my elderly neighbor who'd been friends with my grandfather, told me she'd seen Pamela standing there for nearly an hour, talking to herself and clutching an old photo. "She looked possessed, Nathan," Eleanor whispered when she stopped by with a casserole. Keep saying something about promises and revenge. That woman's been carrying this grudge for 2 decades. Meanwhile, Vanessa Rodriguez, the town librarian who'd helped me research the property lines, was warning anyone who'd listen that Pamela had been making deals with out-of-town developers. But in a small town like Harrington, Pamela's word carried weight, and Vanessa's warnings fell on deaf ears. Even my daughter's teacher, Emily Brown, was getting pushback for defending me to other parents. Clara Johnson, who ran the bakery next door, was particularly vocal. Environmental damage is no joke, she'd say loudly whenever I was within earshot. Some people think they can come to our town and do whatever they please. The irony wasn't lost on me. Clara's bakery produced more non-recyclable waste in a week than my ranch did in a month. But pointing that out would only make things worse. The few neighbors who still believed in me did so quietly, afraid of becoming Pamela's next target. Even Derek Ramsey seemed to be keeping his distance, though he'd sent a brief text saying he was looking into things. The court of public opinion had already reached its verdict, and I was guilty until proven innocent. Late one evening, I sat in my living room, scrolling through the endless comments and shares, my hands trembling with each new accusation. Probably cooking meth in that barn, one particularly creative commenter suggested. I heard he threatened Pamela with a shotgun, claimed another. A complete fabrication, since I didn't even own a firearm. Lily had already asked why kids at school were saying mean things about us, and I'd had to explain that sometimes people believed lies because they were louder than the truth. I was about to close my laptop when Eleanor appeared at my looking around nervously before slipping inside. Nathan, honey, I've got something you need to see, she said, pulling out her phone and showing me a security video from her Ring doorbell. It was grainy but clear enough. Tyson Henderson sneaking into the Miller's property at dawn with a crate of chickens, setting them loose in the garden and filming the chaos with a professional-looking camera set. I knew that boy was up to no good, Eleanor muttered. But his mama's got this whole town wrapped around her finger. The confrontation was inevitable. The next morning, Pamela strutted into my store like she owned it, which, given her real estate ambitions, she probably thought she would soon. A small crowd had gathered, pretending to shop, while obviously there for the drama. Mr. Caldwell, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear, I trust you've seen how the community feels about your operations. Her smile was all teeth and no warmth. Perhaps you should reconsider my generous offer to purchase the ranch. I'd hate to see things get worse for you and your daughter. The threat in her voice was barely concealed. I stood my ground, even as my heart raced. Mrs. Henderson, we both know those videos are fake. We both know you're working with developers too. She cut me off with a laugh. Think Think you can just make accusations and everyone will bow down? Times have changed, Mr. Caldwell. I've made sure of that. The venom in her voice when she mentioned my grandfather made several customers step back. Your family's reign over this town is over. As she left, her heels clicking against my store's hardwood floor, I realized this wasn't just about HOA violations or property values. This was personal, deeply personal, and Pamela had been planning her revenge for years. My phone buzzed with another text from that unknown number, Derek Ramsey's personal cell as it turned out. The message was brief, but shocking. Found paper trail. Pamela's been meeting with Mitchell Davies from Davies Development Group. He's got a record of forcing families off their land through legal manipulation. They're planning something big for your ranch. Evidence attached. Watch your back. The attached documents showed emails between Pamela and Davies discussing the Caldwell problem and potential for luxury resort development once the land is acquired. The final email, dated just yesterday, was the most chilling. Once Nathan Caldwell is thoroughly discredited, we can move forward with the emergency HOA vote to seize the property for community safety. The other homeowners will beg us to take action. Pamela wasn't just playing, she was playing for keeps. Then Nathan's jaw drops as Derek sends proof of Pamela's secret deal with a crooked bigwig. The leaked emails Derek sent me painted a picture of corruption that ran deeper than I'd imagined. Mitchell Davies wasn't just any developer. He was a bigwig with connections to Pamela's old real estate firm. The same one that had collapsed after my grandfather refused to sell his land 25 years ago. The emails revealed that Pamela had been planning this takeover for months, maybe even years. The Caldwell Ranch represents the last major obstacle to the Harrington Luxury Resort and Golf Course, one email read. Its acquisition projected profits exceed $50 million within 5 years. Another message showed Pamela pressuring Derek to arrest me on any charge he could find. I don't care if it's jaywalking, she'd written. I need Nathan Caldwell in handcuffs on the evening news. Derek's response had been professional but firm. I enforce actual laws, not personal vendettas. That probably explained why Pamela was now gunning for both of us. The legal assault came swift and hard. Pamela had hired Richardson and Associates, a law firm known for burying families in litigation until they couldn't afford to fight anymore. The accusation? Money laundering through my general store. It was absurd. My books were clean, every transaction recorded, every tax paid, but that wasn't the point. The point was to drain my resources and destroy what little credibility I had left. They're claiming your cash deposits are suspiciously regular, my lawyer explained over the phone, his voice tired. It's nonsense, but we'll need to provide extensive documentation to prove it. The real blow came when the court ordered my bank accounts frozen pending investigation. Just like that, I couldn't pay suppliers, couldn't buy feed for the chickens, couldn't even buy groceries without begging for credit. Vanessa Rodriguez was burning the midnight oil at the library, digging through property records and historical documents. But Pamela's machine was moving faster than we could counter. My family rallied around me in ways that made my chest tight with emotion. Emily Brown didn't just defend me anymore. She organized a small group of parents who remembered my grandfather fondly. Tom Caldwell helped my family when nobody else would, she told the group. He gave my father a job when we first immigrated here. I won't stand by while his grandson gets railroaded. Even Lily, wise beyond her 8 years, tried to help by drawing pictures of our ranch to show her classmates what it was really like. Peaceful, productive, nothing like the environmental disaster Pamela described. But Pamela wasn't interested in truth. She was interested in victory. She made a big show of visiting her husband's grave, bringing photographers to capture her grieving widow seeking justice act. The images made the local paper with headlines like A Widow's Quest for Truth and the Henderson Tragedy 25 years later. She even announced she was creating the Robert Henderson Memorial Fund to help families affected by corporate corruption. A thinly veiled shot at my family's legacy. Then came the offer that showed Pamela's true intentions. She arrived at my ranch with a small entourage, including a lawyer and what looked like a property assessor. Nathan, she said, affecting a tone of magnanimous concern, I want to end this conflict for the good of our community. Despite everything your grandfather did to my family, I'm prepared to make you a generous offer. She produced a contract with theatrical flair. The number was insulting, maybe 20% of the land's actual value, but that wasn't the worst part. The terms included a non-disclosure agreement that would prevent me from ever discussing my grandfather's business dealings, and an admission that the ranch had been operating outside HOA regulations. Sign this, she said, and I'll withdraw all accusations. Your daughter can grow up without the shadow of scandal. You can move somewhere fresh, start over. Her smile was poison wrapped in sugar. Of course, if you refuse, I'll have no choice but could pursue both civil and criminal action based on the evidence I've uncovered. The flashback hit me that night as I sat alone in my grandfather's study. I remembered being 12 years old, listening to him argue with someone on the phone. Robert, I won't be part of your scheme, you'd said firmly. Those safety corners you're cutting will get people killed. I don't care how much money is involved. After he hung up, he'd found me listening and sat me down. Nathan, sometimes doing the right thing costs you friends. Sometimes it costs you money, but you can't put a price on being able to look at yourself in the mirror. Now, 25 years later, I understood what that phone call had been about. I pulled out the boxes of documents Eleanor had helped me gather and started connecting the dots. There they were. Inspection reports from before my grandfather's involvement, showing Robert Henderson's company had been cited multiple times for substandard concrete, improper reinforcement, and dangerous cost-cutting measures. My grandfather hadn't destroyed the Henderson business. He'd refused to help them cover up their negligence. Going live on social media wasn't my style, but desperate times called for desperate measures. I set up my phone in the ranch's made the original deed visible on the table beside me. Folks, I'm not good at this social media thing, I began, my voice rough with exhaustion. But I need you to hear the truth about what's happening in Harrington. I held up the deed, showing the official stamps and dates. This ranch has been in my family since 1938. It predates any HOA by decades. And yes, it has water rights and exemptions that were granted by the state of Texas, not stolen from any. Then I showed the leaked emails between Pamela and Mitchell Davies, explaining the development scheme. This isn't about justice for Robert Henderson. This is about $50 million in potential profits from turning our community into a playground for the rich. The viewer count climbed steadily as I laid out the evidence, including inspection reports showing the real reason Henderson construction failed. The response was immediate and divided. Comments poured in, some calling me a liar, others thanking me for finally revealing the truth. But the most important reaction came from an unexpected source. Mr. Caldwell, I'm Patricia Warren. An elderly woman introduced herself at my door the next morning. I was Robert Henderson's secretary for 10 years. I've kept quiet all this time because Pamela's been good to me. But I can't stay silent anymore. She handed me a box of old files. Robert was a good man who got desperate when the business started failing. He made bad choices, cut corners he shouldn't have. Your grandfather tried to warn him, even offered to help restructure the company if Robert would fix the safety issues. Robert refused, said Tom Caldwell was trying to steal his business. The bankruptcy wasn't your grandfather's fault. It was pride and poor decisions. Her eyes were wet with tears. Pamela knows this. She's always known. But grief and anger make people rewrite history. The police involvement escalated when Pamela filed criminal slander charges against me. 2 officers arrived at my ranch just as Emily was dropping Lily off from school. The timing wasn't coincidental. Pamela wanted maximum humiliation. Nathan Caldwell, we have a warrant for your arrest on charges of criminal defamation, the lead officer announced. Lily started crying, clinging to my leg as Emily tried to comfort her. Daddy didn't do anything wrong, she sobbed. The image of me being handcuffed in front of my daughter would haunt me forever. But it also steeled my resolve. As they led me away, I caught sight of Vanessa Rodriguez in the crowd that had gathered. She gave me a subtle nod. She'd found something important. Sheriff Ramsey was waiting at the station, his face grim. Nathan, I'm sorry about this. The DA is being pressured hard. But Vanessa Rodriguez called. She has evidence that could shut this whole thing down. Your bail's already been posted by, well, you've got more friends than you know. The emergency HOA meeting that would determine everything was held in the high school gymnasium. The community center wasn't big enough for the crowd that showed up. Pamela had made her final play that morning, producing a report from Environmental Safety Inspections LLC, claiming my ranch was contaminated with toxic chemicals that threatened the groundwater. The inspector, a nervous man named Gerald Hoffman, had sworn under oath that he'd found dangerous levels of pesticides and other chemicals. It was a lie, of course, but a sophisticated one. Pamela stood at the microphone, radiating false concern for the safety of our children, our families, and our future. The Caldwell Ranch must be condemned immediately, she declared. I take no pleasure in this, but public safety must come first. She held up the report like a prophet with stone tablets. This contamination could affect every well in a 5-mile radius. We cannot wait for lengthy legal procedures while our children drink poison. The crowd murmured anxiously. Nothing scared parents like threats to their kids' safety. I stood to present my defense, feeling the weight of 300 pairs of eyes on me. Before I address these false allegations, I want to show you all something. I pulled out the original deed to the ranch, the one from my grandfather's safe. This document, filed with the state of Texas in 1938, includes detailed water surveys required for the attached water rights. Every decade since, as required by law, the water has been tested by state inspectors, not fly-by-night companies that didn't exist until last week. I held up the incorporation papers Eleanor had found. Environmental Safety Inspections LLC was formed 6 days ago. Its registered agent is Gerald Hoffman, whose previous company was shut down for, wait for it, falsifying environmental reports. The crowd turned to look at Hoffman, who was trying to shrink into his seat. But that's not all, I continued, pulling up Tyson's deleted video on the projection screen. Let's see what really happened at my ranch. The video was damning. There was Tyson, clear as day, not just destroying my chicken coop, but spreading something from unmarked containers around the debris. Mon said to make sure the chemicals showed up in any soil test. He laughed into the camera. Got to make it look legit. The gymnasium erupted. Parents who'd been worried about their children's safety were now furious about being manipulated. Clara Johnson stood up, her baker's apron still on from rushing over after work. Pamela Henderson, I've supported you because I believed you had this community's best interests at heart. This is criminal. She turned to address the crowd. I was wrong about Nathan Caldwell. We were all wrong, and we've been fools to let Pamela turn us against each other. The tide was turning so fast that Pamela's supporters were literally edging away from her, leaving her isolated at the podium like a captain on a sinking ship. But Pamela wasn't. In desperation, she played her last card. You're all being deceived, she shrieked, her composed mask finally shattering completely. I have a witness who saw Tom Caldwell sabotage my husband's construction sites. She gestured dramatically to the back of the room, where a man in an ill-fitting suit stood up. Tell them what you told me, Mr. Crenshaw, she commanded. The man walked forward, but before he could speak, Derek Ramsey intercepted him. James Crenshaw, Derek announced, currently out on bail for fraud charges in 3 counties. Also happens to be Pamela's second cousin. He held up a file. We've been investigating you for weeks, James. Taking money to provide false testimony is a serious crime. Crenshaw's face went white, and he bolted for the exit, only to be stopped by 2 deputies. Pamela's final gambit had collapsed spectacularly. The vote to remove Pamela as HOA president was unanimous. Even her die-hard supporters couldn't defend her anymore. But the real drama came when she refused to accept it. You can't do this, she screamed, clutching the podium like a life raft. I built this HOA. I'll protect this community. That man, she pointed at me with a shaking finger, his family destroyed mine. My husband died broken because of the Caldwells. Her hair had come completely undone, her makeup running with tears of rage. 25 years I've waited, 25 years of planning, and you're all too stupid to see the truth. Security had to physically remove her from the podium as she continued ranting. This isn't over, Nathan Caldwell. You hear me? It's not over. But it was over, at least for her control of the HOA. As they dragged her out, still screaming about conspiracies and revenge, I felt no satisfaction, only pity for a woman whose grief had twisted into something monstrous. The aftermath happened quickly. Eleanor Murphy, of all people, was elected interim HOA president by acclamation. Her first act was to formally acknowledge the ranch's exemption from HOA jurisdiction. Seems like we should have done this about 6 months ago, she said dryly, getting a much-needed laugh from the crowd. Derek announced criminal charges were being filed against Pamela, Tyson, and Gerald Hoffman for conspiracy, fraud, and destruction of property. The evidence is overwhelming, he stated, including financial records showing payments from Mitchell Davies's company to Mrs. Henderson totaling over $200,000. The crowd gasped. Pamela had been bought and paid for from the beginning. As people filed out, many stopped to apologize to me personally. Clara Johnson was particularly emotional. I'm ashamed of how easily I believed her lies. Your grandfather helped my family when we first moved here. I should have remembered that instead of listening to poison. 3 days later, I stood in the barn my grandfather had built with his own hands, now fully repaired with the help of neighbors who'd finally seen the truth. Emily and Lily were planting flowers where the chicken coop had stood. We'd rebuild that too, bigger and better. Eleanor stopped by with a gift, a new sign for the ranch gate reading Caldwell Ranch, established 1938, neighbors always welcome. As we hung it up, she shared something that put everything in perspective. Your grandfather once told me that the hardest part of doing right isn't the doing. It's the waiting for folks to see the truth. He'd be proud of how you handled this, Nathan. That evening, as I watched the sunset from the porch with my family, the land Pamela had tried to steal spread out before us in golden light. I thought about justice and revenge, about how grief could heal or fester into something toxic. My phone buzzed with a message from Derek. Pamela's been booked, bail denied due to flight risk. Thought you should know. But when Vanessa steps into court, she's ready to expose Pamela's darkest secret from 25 years ago. The courtroom was packed for what the local news had dubbed the trial of the century for Harrington County. I sat at the plaintiff's table, watching Pamela Henderson enter in an orange jumpsuit, a far cry from her designer suit. Her hair hung limp around her face as she clutched a worn photo of her late husband. The judge, the Honorable Margaret Harris, had a reputation for no-nonsense justice. Vanessa Rodriguez had promised something that would change everything, and as she took the witness stand, I noticed Pamela's lawyer whispering urgently. Mr. Rodriguez, the prosecutor began, you've worked as Harrington's head librarian for 30 years. Can you tell the court what you discovered regarding events from 25 years ago? Vanessa adjusted her glasses and pulled out an old manila folder. 25 years ago, Pamela Henderson, then Pamela Morrison, worked at the sheriff's office as an administrative assistant. I found records indicating she attempted to bribe then-Deputy Harold Murphy to falsify reports about the Caldwell Ranch. The courtroom gasped, and Derek Ramsey leaned forward in his seat. Vanessa continued with devastating precision. The bribery attempt was related to a land dispute. Pamela wanted the sheriff's office to claim the Caldwell Ranch was involved in illegal activities, so it could be seized and sold to her husband's construction company. She produced employment records and a signed statement from Harold Murphy. But there's more, she said. Tom Caldwell discovered this bribery attempt. Instead of pressing charges, he met with the governor and worked out a deal. Tom agreed not to pursue criminal charges against Pamela in exchange for permanent protection of his ranch from any HOA or municipal interference. The governor granted special exemptions and water rights that would pass to his heirs in perpetuity. Additionally, Tom donated funds to establish the sheriff's department building we still use today. Derek's expression showed understanding dawning. That's why we have a plaque honoring Tom Caldwell. He literally helped create the modern department to prevent future corruption. The truth was painting my grandfather not as a villain, but as someone who'd protected the community while showing mercy. Pamela's reaction was volcanic. She shot up from her seat, the bailiff moving to restrain her. Lies, oh lies, she screamed, her face contorted with rage. Tom Caldwell destroyed us. He had the power to save my husband's company, and he let it die. He let Robert die. Her hair had come completely undone, her makeup running with tears of rage. 25 years I've waited. 25 years of planning, and you're all too stupid to see the truth. Security had to physically remove her from the podium as she continued ranting. This isn't over, Nathan Caldwell. You hear me? It's not over. But it was over, at least for her control of the HOA. As they dragged her out, still screaming about conspiracies and revenge, I felt no satisfaction, only pity for a woman whose grief had twisted into something monstrous. The flashback testimony that followed sealed Pamela's fate. My grandfather's letter to the governor was read aloud. I choose not to destroy Pamela Morrison despite her actions. Let her termination be enough. But protect my land and my family's future from those who would abuse power. Use my donation to build a sheriff's department that serves justice, not greed. The court learned that Robert Henderson's company had been failing due to safety violations long before my grandfather's involvement. Multiple witnesses confirmed Tom Caldwell had actually offered to help restructure the company if Robert would fix the problems. But pride had prevented the partnership. The company's collapse was inevitable. Pamela had simply needed someone to blame for her husband's failures and subsequent death. As witness after witness painted a picture of my grandfather's integrity versus Pamela's decades of scheming, even her remaining supporters couldn't deny the truth. The verdict was swift and decisive. Pamela Henderson was found guilty on all counts: conspiracy, fraud, destruction of property, bribery, and attempted extortion. Judge Harris sentenced her to 8 years in federal prison, with no possibility of early release. Mrs. Henderson, your grief, while understandable, does not excuse a decades-long campaign of revenge against an innocent family. Your actions tore a community apart and nearly destroyed Nathan Caldwell's livelihood. As they led Pamela away, she whispered to her husband's photo, "I'm sorry, Robert. I failed you." It was the first genuine emotion I'd seen that wasn't anger. Tyson received 2 years for his role. Gerald Hoffman got 18 months and lost his license permanently. Mitchell Davies escaped criminal charges, but faced civil lawsuits that would bankrupt his company. Outside the courthouse, Derek found me in the rain. "Your grandfather saved my family too," he said quietly. "My mother left my corrupt father because Tom Caldwell helped her get back on her feet. I'm glad I could help save yours." 3 months later, the barn barbecue was Eleanor's idea, but the whole town contributed. Tables groaned under potluck dishes while children ran between restored chicken coops, laughter filling the air where accusations once flew. I stood grilling burgers, watching Lily play with other kids, her joy infectious. Emily worked alongside Clara Johnson and Vanessa Rodriguez like old friends. Even former Pamela supporters attended, eager to move past recent darkness. Eleanor raised her glass for a toast. To Tom Caldwell, who taught us justice doesn't need to be cruel, just patient. And to Nathan, who showed us standing up for what's right is worth any price. As glasses clinked, I thought about my grandfather's letter: protect the land, protect the community, protect the truth. During cleanup, Derek approached with an envelope. "This came addressed to you." No return address, but postmarked from Houston. The letter inside chilled me despite the warm evening. "Mr. Caldwell, I represent investors interested in developing rural Texas. We've watched Harrington with great interest. Your stance against predatory development hasn't gone unnoticed. We'd like to discuss partnering for responsible land use benefiting long-term residents. However, be warned, not everyone shares our values. The Davies Group may be finished, but others are already eyeing Harrington. Your fight to protect your community is far from over. Be prepared." It was unsigned, but the message was clear. I folded the letter, looking out at my grandfather's land where families were making memories. "Justice doesn't punch, it waits," I murmured. Clara overheard and smiled. "Your grandfather sounds like quite the philosopher." I nodded. He was a rancher who understood some fights are won by planting seeds and waiting for harvest. As the sun set over the ranch, I knew this was just the beginning. Pamela had been driven by personal vengeance. The next threat might be driven by something far more dangerous: cold, calculated greed, backed by resources that would make Pamela's schemes look amateur. But I was ready. The community was ready. And somewhere, my grandfather was smiling, knowing his legacy was in good hands. But when Nathan opens that letter, a new threat to his ranch looms large. Your thoughts in the comments. You made it through. You deserve a medal, or at least another HOA Unfiltered episode. Hit that next video, and let's keep the madness going.